Hello, YouTube. So, Islamic Terror struck again recently in Brussels, the capital city of the nation of Belgium. The death toll is over 30 people from bombings that took place in both the Brussels airport and in their subway system. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attacks, and the regressive left was quick to chime in on the event, and they started making their predictable cries of white racism. And here's a few examples. An Islamophobic Bacnal is already gripping Twitter in the wake of the Brussels atrocity. And by the way, Bacnal, that's like a drunken celebration. I know that's like an obscure word. But the same cycle, round and round we go, amidst the whooping of bloodthirsty racists whose myopia and hatred is a match for the terrorists. And then her tweets go off into a bunch of nonsense. But just take note, if you were on Twitter the other day and you expressed your anger for the Brussels attack and you wished for something like the destruction of ISIS, then you're the bloodthirsty one. And your hatred is on par with the actual killers. And then you had the opportunistic ones who decided that this was a great opportunity to push feminism or to make the terror attack all about themselves. A tiny selection of the misogynist abuse I'm receiving minutes after tweeting about Brussels. Well, Lori Penny, you were quite outspoken about how racist white Western men were after the clone sex assaults, in spite of the fact that it was close to 1,000 Muslims who were doing the actual attacking that night. So I'm not surprised that you heard it from some folks on Twitter. To try and be fair to her, she did tweet out later, "It's precisely because I don't want to make it all about me that I find these personal attacks appalling and tasteless. The focus should be on the victims and their families. I'm instead wading through reams of hate speech. The internet is disappointing." You can make up your own mind if you think she was backpedaling after getting some heat on Twitter or if that's what she really meant from the start. And then there was this. In my opinion, the Stop Islam hashtag trending is even worse than what happened in my country today. Come on, man. A hashtag expressing the anger from the people who actually want to live in peace is worse than over 30 innocent people being brutally murdered? Regressive is all hell. And then there was this special snowflake. And look, she happens to have a Tumblr account. Surprise, surprise. She tweets, "Y'all are tweeting Stop Islam when study says white extremists have killed more Americans in the U.S. than jihadists since 9/11. Well, this turned out to be a popular tweet for her. There's thousands of retweets and thousands of people clicking the like button. So it seems like the special snowflake walked away from Twitter for a little while, and then when she came back, she saw that her notifications just went totally bonkers. What the fuck? I go for an hour and that blew up. Help! Laughing my ass off. Now, Special Snowflake got a little bit miffed because other people were essentially tweeting the same tweet as her, but not retweeting her original tweet, and she took the time to let them know about it. The retweet button works, XO. Yeah, you could have retweeted me. Retweet me next time, bro. These people are testing me, mate, I tell ya. So it seems that the thousands of retweets she got apparently weren't enough for her. Yeah, so you got a couple dozen in the streets dead, hundreds more wounded, and this special snowflake is concerned about getting all the retweets that she deserves. I don't know, just whatever. So let's put the Twitter people aside and let's get to the regressive media, specifically the Time Magazine article that she mentioned in her tweet. It's an older article from June of 2015, but from the popularity of her tweet and in the wake of the recent terror attacks, it seems, to ignite people's interest again. So the subject line tells us that we should be more afraid of white people than Islamic terrorists here in America. Study says white extremists have killed more Americans in the U.S. than jihadists since 9/11. Radical Islamists were also indicted more frequently than non-Muslim extremists and served longer sentences. Since 9/11, white right-wing terrorists have killed almost twice as many Americans in homegrown attacks than radical Islamists have, according to research by the New America Foundation. In their June study, the foundation decided to examine groups engaged in violent extremist activity and found that white extremists were by far the most dangerous. And just look at that picture. You got these two Muslim women. They look scared and frightened, and they're hugging each other. Like, tell me that wasn't a carefully selected piece of propaganda that was put in there to tug on your heartstrings and just make you feel as guilty as hell. As a matter of fact, I think this whole article is one big piece of regressive propaganda. It gets picked up by the special snowflakes on Tumblr and other aggressive people, and they use it to shame all the mean and hateful white people who are the root of all evil in the world today. Even when, actually, especially when a horrific terror attack happens and white people have the audacity to get angry about it. Let's break it down. So the study gives us a breakdown of all the extremist killings that happened in the USA by citizens and legal residents. And I just want to be clear on that. All of the killers, both Muslim and non-Muslim alike in this study, are either citizens or they were in the United States legally. What you see on the screen is a portion of their results. As you can see, there are 45 dead due to Islamic extremism and 48 dead due to what they label as far right-wing attacks. And yes, these killers are white people. Now, did a red flag go up in your mind? Because I'm not a math whiz, but I know that 45 is not the double of 48. But the Time magazine article, they said, and I quote, "Since 9/11, right-wing terrorists have killed almost twice as many Americans in homegrown attacks than radical Islamists have." Also, there were only 3 more killings on the far right-wing side versus the Islamic attacks. Over a time span as long as from 9/11, 2001 until 2015, that's basically like an equal number, but fine. So the far right technically has a higher body count. I'll give you that. I do think it's instructive, though, to try and break down the motivation for the attacks. If you follow the links in the original article, you can see that the study provides descriptions of each attack, and I tried to organize things by putting a label on each one to identify the motivations of the attacks. So now I'm just going to reorganize the results so that attacks that were similarly motivated on the right-wing side are grouped together. So you can see that there were 16 deaths that were due to anti-US government groups, 24 deaths that were due to racism or white supremacists, 4 deaths that were due to extreme pro-life people, people that were against abortion. 2 killings were committed by an anti-immigration activist, and there were 2 deaths that were due to some man who he went into a church that advocated for gay rights and progressive values, and he just started shooting people. Now I'll acknowledge that there's probably some overlap in the motivations of the different groups. Perhaps many of the anti-government groups were also racist, and maybe some of the racists also had anti-government ideas. But some of the killings, like the pro-life and anti-abortion killings, they probably weren't related at all to any of the other killings. If you're going to go out and kill an abortion doctor, that doesn't indicate that you're a racist, or that doesn't indicate that you're against the government. That just indicates your feeling on abortion. Moreover, even some of the killings that were similarly motivated weren't really that related to each other outside the fact that the killers were white. Let's just take 2 examples by looking at the anti-government attacks. On June 8th of 2014, Gerard Miller and Amanda Miller, a married couple, allegedly killed 2 police officers in an ambush at a pizza restaurant in Las Vegas, proceeding to kill another person in a Walmart parking lot as they left the scene before committing suicide. Law enforcement are believed to have discovered a manifesto written by the shooters, though its content is unknown. The shooters reportedly yelled "revolution" during the shooting and left a swastika on the body of one policeman. They also had previously spoken of targeting law enforcement officers and expressed militant views, according to their neighbors. Second Assistant Sheriff Kevin McMahill stated, "We believe that they equate government and law enforcement with Nazis," as quoted by CNN. In other words, the swastika that they left on the policeman, that was not the killers indicating that we are Nazis and we're killing you guys. They were basically saying, we believe you guys behave like Nazis, and that justifies why we're killing you. And another example from one of the government attacks. 2004, Wade Lay and his son Christopher Lay killed an armed guard while conducting an armed robbery. They were convicted in 2005. Wade Lay testified that the money was meant to buy weapons, and according to the district attorney, there was a self-proclaimed mission to revenge Waco. Christopher Lay had made a list of individuals he deemed responsible for Waco. So if you aren't aware of the Waco incident, it was basically this standoff between some religious cult and the FBI back in 1993 that led to the burning of the cult's compound and a shootout that left 4 dead agents and 6 dead cult members. Okay, so I think what we can see here is that the killings by the far right-wing extremists, they're only kind of loosely related to each other. Yes, the killers are white. Yes, they're definitely far right-leaning in their ideologies, but they weren't all killing in the name of the same group, ideology, or cause. The killer who murdered the abortion doctor really had nothing to do with the killers who wanted revenge for the Waco incident, and neither of those had anything to do with the husband and wife who did the murder-suicide in Las Vegas. Race is the primary unifier on the right side of this chart. So let's look at the ideological motivation for the killings on the left side of the screen. Basically, all of them were motivated by a single ideology, radical Islam. None of the killers on the left side were white. They were a mix of black people, Mideastern people, and Asian people. And I think this is significant. Basically, on the right side, the authors of this study are grouping people together primarily by race. On the left side, they are grouped together primarily by a single ideology. And as the United States is a majority white country with white people making up 77% of the population, you should expect that a majority of any activity will be committed by white people, be it killing, mowing the lawn, going to college, robbing a bank, riding a bicycle. That's just how numbers work. Okay, so this study, on the left side of their chart, they got people grouped together by radical Islam, and on the right, they got people grouped together primarily by race, white people. And we know that 77% of the American population is white people. So what percent of the population is Muslim? To get an estimate, we'll look at Wikipedia. They got the Muslim population in the United States at about 0.9%. Now, I'm going to note that some data shows that about 30% of American Muslims identify as white. But again, in this study, none of the Islamic killers in this study were white people. So just for simplicity's sake, I'll just say that less than 1% of the United States is non-white Muslim. So now let's put this information on a new pie chart and get an intuitive sense for the size discrepancy between white people in America and non-white Muslims in America. Orange is white people, blue is non-white Muslims, and gray is everything else, other. So you can see white people massively outnumber non-white Muslims. Now, when we take into account the death toll, all of a sudden the study described in Time magazine, to me, gets revealed for the propaganda that it is. So what you have is a case where less than 1% of the population is responsible for almost the same number of deaths due to extremist ideology as 77% of the population. That is an absolutely staggering disproportionality. To quote the Time magazine article again, white extremists were by far the most dangerous. Bullshit. First of all, the Time magazine article said there were twice as many dead from white extremism versus Muslim extremism, which isn't at all what the study reveals. I don't see where they came up with that. The death toll between what they call violent jihadist attacks is about equal to the far right-wing attacks. Percentage-wise, an insignificantly small portion of the population, only a fraction of 1% of the total population, has a death toll from extremist activities that rivals the majority of the population, white people. Additionally, this tiny fraction is more tightly unified in what has motivated them to commit their atrocities: radical Islam. The right-wing attacks had a variety of motivations. So how is this Time magazine article not a piece of propaganda? They seem to have lied about the numbers in the report. They put that heart-tugging picture of the sad and frightened women in it. And the study seems very misleading. I think it's clear that Time magazine has a significant regressive left slant. The media will always lie to us over and over again. Sadly, a lot of Tumblr snowflakes and gender-obsessed ideologues and other regressives in general will just eat this garbage up and regurgitate it to the masses on social media. It's amazing how many likes this tweet got, especially on the heels of the terror attack. Muslims can commit mass murder, and there's a certain group of people out there who will always focus all of their ire towards anyone who's willing to call out bad behavior and bad ideas when they see it. And lastly, why the fuck does this Time magazine start its body count post 9/11? Isn't that a little convenient from them? I mean, if they just go back one day, they'll have to add 2,996 killed by the radical Islamic extremists to their list.